December the 29th, 2025. Welcome back to the Two Witnesses Live. I'm your host, Watchful. And it's time once again for the daily Torment report. I was going to do the summary thing today, but Trump, because he met with both Zelensky and Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, hasn't really posted a whole lot, so it's worth just going through what he posted. He's got some interesting videos. Elon, on the other hand, posted a lot, but there's a lot of funny memes. So hopefully we'll get through these quick and not make this a 3-hour show. So let's get into this. We'll start with Donald Trump, as is our way. This is the way. All right, here we go. One of Obama's most treasonous policies was to fund Iran's nuclear program. See, this is a meme from Chris Bjorn that Donald Trump reposted a day ago. So it says, Biden and Obama gave Iran over $220 billion to research and build nukes. Shame. Iran nearly had 6 nuclear bombs and the ICBMs that would have destroyed Israel and 5 cities in the U.S. Democrats were going to take away our fossil fuels so millions would freeze and starve to death. Democrats wanted to replace you with uneducated Mexicans who would be easier to enslave. People who vote for Democrats are dumb and suicidal. So we got New York City on a very hot day, and then not looking good for the average American's $38 trillion debt, and it's going up. Trade deficits going up, interest rates going up, inflation up, layoffs up instantly, and crime up. Economy could collapse anytime. Read this novel and learn survival strategies. Go to Amazon and search, what is that, Knight Rider and the Warrior Queen. Okay. Yeah. Yep. Yeah, I mean, that was my understanding, is that they, and this is why I think the earth, when it talks about the dragon being cast to the earth and pursuing the woman and casted a flood out of its mouth, in Revelation 12. I believe that was the Aloxa flood, was the flood that was cast out after the woman being Israel, and the earth opening up and swallowing that flood is Hamas got anxious and they went in before all the nations who had wanted to be a part of that flood were able to. And I believe that what this is referring to is, or could be connected to this, is that the intention was to completely wipe Israel off the face of the map, and it didn't happen. We're living through Revelation 12 right there. And I think that helps to define who the woman is, because there's always been this question, who's the woman in Revelation 12? There's multiple possibilities. Likewise with the woman in pain to be delivered from Revelation 12:1 and 2. There's speculation on Mary, the church, Israel. So the fact that the flood was initially cast after Israel, and then the earth swallowed it up, and then the dragon turned its attention on the children of the woman, I think it's the children of the woman who are the Christians. So I think that's the way that works out, just based on what we've seen. Those are my guesses. I could be wrong, but those are my guesses. All right, moving on. So from townhall.com, this was posted a day ago. Whoa, Mark Thiessen just wrecked. Did you? Whoa, what is that, Goofy? Sorry. In a goofy mood today. Mark Thiessen just wrecked Democrats for harping on POTUS's war on drugs while staying silent under Obama. War crime? Start with Barack Obama. He had a drone campaign, fired 560 drone strikes, killed not just terrorists, but an American citizen, and did it on the ground instead of international waters. I interviewed David Shedd on my podcast, the head of the Defense Intelligence Agency under Obama. He said he did double tap strikes all the time. In fact, we usually had a second predator in the sky waiting for the intelligence to clear to see if there were survivors, to see if we could take them out. Isn't that what they just accused Donald Trump of with the boats? Or not, Marco Rubio? This was a regular practice under the Obama administration, because they were going after terrorists. Trump has declared these people a foreign terrorist organization. He's using the same authority as Obama. Boom. All right, here's one of those videos.
Barack Obama had a drone campaign. He fired 560 drone strikes, killed not just terrorists, but killed an American citizen, Anwar al-Awlaki. Did it on the ground, violating sovereignty instead of in international waters. And he regularly did what are called double tap and even triple tap strikes. I interviewed David Shedd, who on my podcast, What the Hell is Going On Today, who was the head of the Defense Intelligence Agency under Obama. And he said, we did double tap strikes all of the time. In fact, we usually had a second predator in the sky waiting for the intelligence to clear to see if there were any survivors so we could take them out. So this was a regular practice under the Obama administration because they were going after terrorists. Trump has declared these people foreign terrorist organizations. He's using the same authority as the Obama administration.
Now, in terms of how we characterize the fight between the United States and these drug cartels, here's what the DEA Administrator Terry Cole said earlier today.
This is all about saving American citizens and protecting our national security.
All right, so that's basically in a nutshell, that's the 10-second elevator pitch, what this is all about. Democrats say that the Trump administration is desperately trying to make this like, it's Al-Qaeda or it's ISIS. Well, I counted up, about 3,100 Americans died at the hands of Al-Qaeda and ISIS. Last year in this country, it was 80,391 people died of overdose deaths in the United States. So is this or is this not a threat to American national security and to Americans?
If you're killed by a plane or if you're killed by poison, you're equally dead, right? And these people are poisoning the American people. This is an act of terrorism. The president has full legal authority to do this. First of all, he designated them foreign terrorist organizations. Then he notified Congress that we were in an armed conflict with those terrorist organizations. Then he had the Office of Legal Counsel prepare a memo setting the parameters for what was legal and what was within the laws of war for carrying out these strikes. And they've been following that. Not a single lawyer has objected.
Yeah. Well, and I think this goes a long way to help the homelessness problem, because right now these sanctuary cities they've been getting paid per homeless person. My understanding is up to $1 million based on the amount of money they've received in order to help with the homelessness problem. Well, a lot of these sanctuary cities also give away free drugs, which in my mind is treasonous and just goes against God and nature. These people need to be brought to justice. So I'm glad that he's restricting the flow of drugs coming into this country, and the lawfare is going to be next. They're going to find out that he's a master of lawfare. They thought that they could try and use lawfare against him. Things seem to be the wrench seems to be tightening. The straps seem to be coming down. I'm hoping to see some arrests and some charges here soon. All right, what is this? Is this the same video? Let's see. From TV News Now, Trump has done more in the first year of his presidency than Biden did in 4 years. Fox News' Mark Thiessen says, it is stunning. Love him or hate him, it is a serious list of achievements. Very true. All right, what do we got here? This is is this what I just said?
Every year of Trump's presidency, I've done a 10 best and 10 worst list. And the 10 best list this year is, I can't get it down to 10. It's stunning. But let's just start in the first weeks of his administration. So remember, after the Abbey Gate bombing, Joe Biden went out and said, we will hunt you down and we will make you pay. Well, 3 years went by. He hunted no one down. He made no one pay. Trump got the mastermind of the Abbey Gate bombing in 6 weeks. All right. Then he, in a matter of weeks, he shut down the border with the numbers that you laid out. He's, as you said, he passed his promise to deliver no taxes on tips, no tax on overtime, no tax on Social Security. He passed the Trump accounts, which is basically creating a trust fund for every child in America. OK, and that's just domestic stuff. Foreign policy. Everybody talks about Trump as if he's an isolationist. You and I both know he's not an isolationist. Look at what he's done. He bombed the Houthis. He bombed the Iranians. He's bombing Venezuelan gunboats and blockading Venezuela. He's threatened to send the U.S. military into Nigeria to protect Christians from Islamic radicals. He's doing more for Ukraine right now than Joe Biden ever did. Joe Biden wouldn't let them fire into Russia, wouldn't provide them with intelligence to fire into Russia. Trump is doing that. He wouldn't put sanctions on oil and gas because he was afraid of raising gas prices. Trump is doing that. And Trump's offered them Article 5 security commitment. And by the way, he's also getting NATO to pay for the weapons instead of American taxpayers, and he's gotten NATO to increase its spending from 2%, which it wasn't even meeting when he was first president, to 5%. This is a string of accomplishments in a first year that I think he's done more in the first year of his presidency than Joe Biden accomplished in 4 years of his presidency. It's a stunning, love him or hate him, that is a serious list of achievements.
Agreed. All right, and I think that's the end of what. No, let's see. I had a good, very productive phone call with President Putin of Russia prior to my meeting today at 1 p.m. today with President Zelensky of Ukraine. The meeting will take place in the main dining room of Mar-a-Lago. Press is invited. Thank you for your attention to this matter. Let's see. And then I am pleased to announce that the breakout fighting between Thailand and Cambodia will stop momentarily, and they will go back to living in peace, as per our recent agreed original treaty. I want to congratulate both great leaders on their brilliance in coming to this rapid and very fair conclusion. It was fast and decisive, as all of these situations should be. The United States of America, as always, was proud to help with all of the wars and conflicts. He's just going into the... And there you go. That's where we left off with Donald Trump. Let's catch up with our chats here. Oh, boy. Oh, wow. You guys really got started with a lot of chats before the show. Let's see, the most embarrassing... I don't think some of these aren't relevant. Looks like maybe a personal conversation about YouTubers. Let's see. Let's go down here. So the Trump held a conference with Zelensky and refused all of the European talking points he raised because they were all for war. Indeed. He also refused Marjorie Taylor Greene's talking points because she claimed war was in our best economical interest instead of peace. These idiots. Said if Iran didn't come to a peace agreement with us, and if they decided to pursue their nuclear program again, they would get hit fast. Yes, he did. He's not going to allow them to build up any nuclear weapons again. Ordered the FBI to go door to door in Minnesota and make arrests in the fraud case of both child care and the child welfare program there and the healthcare program there. Yeah, so if you guys didn't get a chance to watch that Nick Shirley video, which is going viral, it's well worth your time. I watched it probably twice just because I kept getting distracted from it and then sat down and finally got a good viewing of it. It's insane, the amount of fraud. I think he said he uncovered $111 million worth of fraud in just that one investigation. And Elon, it takes the spotlight on Elon Musk's posts. There's a lot of funny memes. One lady out front calling him ICE, and he's like, "I'm not ICE. I'm just an investigator." Pretty funny. See, Trump is proving that he is great at multitasking and keeping several lines of investigation going at once. Elections, Obama, Minnesota, Omar, the Dem Party, FDA, Maha, and more. Indeed, Trump is a master at multitasking. It's exhausting just trying to keep up with him. Elon Musk, too. Both of these men. Like, these are the two richest men in the world. So, number one, we should take a lesson from that. If you're not making enough money, maybe you're not doing enough. I mean, Trump's 80, so age really isn't an excuse. I have family members who are up there in age who we've offered multiple times different ways of making money, and they just don't wanna. So, if money is an issue and you don't want to, take a lesson from Donald Trump and Elon Musk. The richest men in the world don't need to work, and yet they work like dogs. So, I don't know. Your mileage may vary depending on what you put into it. I get it. We all have different situations. I'm constantly trying to figure out how to make more with less. How to get double and triple impact on my what it is where I put my energy in a day. All right, Trump needs to do something about high health care bills. He is. Yeah, it's why he's dismantling Obamacare, which is the reason for high health care bills. I have bad news for you though, because a lot of those subsidies are ending in 2025. So in 2026, they're not renewing some of those subsidies, but they are working very quickly to implement solutions. Trump has been talking about the stopping the money that was, earmarked for the insurance companies and instead sending it to Americans. I don't know. I haven't read anything or heard anything about if or when that's going to take place, only that he's working on it. So there may be a period of time where it gets really hard with the healthcare, because we're going to have the situation where the money that was going to the insurance companies is no longer going to be going to the insurance companies, and there may not be a good solution for Obamacare after 2025. So, yikes! Kind of curious to see what's going to happen in 2026. You know what I mean? But I mean, that's just there. Anytime you're trying to fix and change things, pain is part of the process. As an engineer, we get very used to pain. Like, when say you've spent a year or 2 year working on something, and you get to a point to where it's so difficult to work on it, sometimes the best course of action is to start over from scratch. The fear is that it's going to take you another 2 years to get to where you are, but that's not typically true of that metric. Typically, all of the struggle and challenges and changes that lessons that you learned over 2 years, you're able to highly focus those into your next iteration, and you can typically do it much quicker. So, for example, when writing software, it tends to grow into this ugly spaghetti mess. It's often much faster, rather than continually trying to fix the spaghetti mess. It's often much faster to just rebuild it from scratch. And you take all the lessons you learned from the spaghetti mess and you put them into the new products, and you tend to get it done in a very, very short order. So I imagine that the same will be true with healthcare. Is like, we've got this giant spaghetti mess. The fastest course of action is going to be rebuild from scratch, but there's going to be a painful transition, unfortunately. All right. Let's move on to Elon Musk. We got quite a few to get through with him. We're going to start off with funny memes, and I'm going to move over to this side. All right. Funny. So if you guys have seen the Somali pirates movie, I can't remember what movie this is from. It's based on the real life situation of the Somali pirates. This one in particular was a particular tanker. I can't remember the name of the movie, escapes me right now, but you get the meme. He says, "I'm the captain now." So this is the 42-minute video from Nick Shirley, where he went, to all of these different learning centers. Even spoke to somebody, a representative of Minnesota, Democratic representative. When he was doing this investigation, they are actually holding meetings in the government about the actual fraud. And the Republicans seem to be presenting a lot of evidence. The Democrats are ignoring it and pushing against it, as is their behavior, which to me implies they're probably benefiting from the fraud. All right. Another meme. And Somalia will be president of the UN Security Council too next month. What? Fate has an epic sense of irony. Look at me. I run the daycare center now. What is this? Somalia will be president of the UN Security Council next month. Interesting. Huh. What does that mean? All right. From cynical Publius, fraud in Minnesota. I'm not sure that most Americans understand that in a large swaths of humanity, there's no actual concept of fraud, particularly fraud against the government. Instead, there is a belief in the virtue of getting away with what you can to help yourself and your tribe. I spent a lot of my life in the Middle East and Central Asia, working closely with foreign contractors and foreign governments to provide support to American military operations. As a U.S. Army officer with a big checkbook, courtesy of Uncle Sam, I can't really count the sheer number of times I was offered bribes to award a contract or falsify records to do things, like create larger fake head counts at places like dining facilities. or to just simply be on the take for future illegal requests. Of course, I had enough sense to never comply with such requests. Moreover, they were never explicitly structured as bribes. Instead, it was usually along the lines of, here, I have these Rolexes as gifts for you and your wife to show our friendship. The Bible says that a gift blinds the eyes. Indeed, it does. Unfortunately, too many U.S. officers and NCOs succumbed to this siren song and ended up breaking rocks in Leavenworth. The weird thing about this to me was that whenever I turned down such an offering, it was treated as a grave insult. I was the one in the wrong and not the fraudster trying to bribe me. They considered it rude that I was in their country and refused to accept how things got done. After all, why did I not want to help my tribe by helping their tribe? Let me repeat, in these cultures, fraud is not even a concept. There is only what helps your tribe. Interesting mentality. Such thought processes are so alien to Americans and much of the West. We are raised on the presumption that our institutions are valid, that the rule of law always prevails, and that the integrity is universal. We need these presumptions to have working governments and economies, and without these presumptions, without the mental barrier that causes us to not accept outright fraud, our nation would quickly descend into the economic and social hellscape of countries like, Somalia. So when we import people en masse from cultures that accept bribery and fraud as routine, acceptable ways to advance one's tribes, we should not be surprised that things like the $8 billion fraud schemes of the Somali population in Minnesota happen so easily. Introducing a fraud-based culture based on tribalism into America is like introducing some sort of lethal virus into a population that has no natural immunity. Interesting. The virus will spread and grow unchecked because it is so alien to the host. Similarly, a culture of fraud is anathema to American thinking and must be cut out before it consumes the hosts. So when you see and hear patriotic Americans decrying what is happening in Minnesota or elsewhere, and when they seek deportation of the offenders, it is not racism, it is not bigotry, it is not xenophobia. Instead, it is preserving the American tradition of responsible institutions and national integrity. Oh, I couldn't agree more. Well said. Elon apparently thinks the same thing, so this is accurate. All right, so breaking Minnesota Somali fraud. There's a lot on Elon's posts today about this fraud. Minnesota Somali fraud plot deepens. Fake child care centers caught donating to Democrats. What? Get out of town. Screenshots are blowing up showing Somali-run daycare centers in Minnesota funneling donations to local Somali public politicians right around the time massive fraud scandals hit the fan. We're talking places like Sunshine Child Care Center, Inc., Minnesota Best Child Care Center, Adult Care LLC, and Lucky Child Care Center LLC dropping $1,000 checks in 2021 mixed in with individual donors. This is tied into the epic Feeding Our Future mess, where prosecutors say over $250 million in federal COVID aid for kids' meals got siphoned off by Somali-linked nonprofits. Recent probes flag up to half of the $18 billion in state programs potentially looted, including daycare scams where centers pocket millions with no kids in sight, exposing empty daycares in Minnesota that scored up to $4 million. Politicians like Ilhan Omar got hit with donations from fraud suspects back in 22, though she bounced the cash to food banks. Trump and VP Vance are piling on about Somali fraud rings turning Minnesota into a scam haven. It's got folks demanding audits and deportations, calling it a kickback loop where taxpayer dollars boomerang to politicians pushing more handouts. Interesting. That didn't really come up in Nick Shirley's investigative report, so that's interesting. And it makes sense, and this is something that Elon has said when he was working Doge, when he was leading Doge, is that what he found is a lot of the money from the NGOs goes back to the government. So you can't have a non-government organization that is not only fed by the government, but also feeds the government. It's basically a proxy. You literally can't find a single mainstream article about the Minnesota fraud, not even one. Interesting. Legacy media articles on the Somali daycare fraud discovered in Minnesota, 0. Not even CBS. Why not just raise income tax rates? Let's see. This is from David Friedberg replying to Rakana and Kamath. Because your real intent is not to just provide health care. You're masking that you are proposing the creation of, for the first time in 250 years of the American Republic, an organized government seizure of private property from citizens. You're calling it a welfare tax, a billionaire tax, a millionaire tax, or whatever nom du jour polls well. But at the end of the day, it's the seizure of private property from citizens by the government, citizens that earn money. This is too long. We're not going to read this whole thing. I mean, if we read every single essay that's posted, what's he replying to? Let's see, Peter Thiel is leaving California if we pass a 1% tax on billionaires for 5 years to pay for health care for the working class facing steep Medicaid cuts. I echo what FDR said with sarcasm of economic royalists when they see, you know what, I honestly just don't care about this stuff. I mean, like I don't know enough to fix it or to, I mean, I could comment on it probably intelligently, but why? I mean, we're looking at Christ coming back. This stuff really is just not that important. I think it's interesting to know that this stuff is being exposed. It's interesting to know that people are trying to push for these things. I'm more geared towards Christ coming back. That's my all-encompassing objective here. You know, yeah, I mean, taxes go up. They continue to go up. Trump is bringing in a ton of money. Okay, whatever. You know, the inflation was meant, according to the scripture, to be, it seems as though it was limited to the midst of the 4 living creatures. So I'm hoping we're coming out of that inflationary period of time. But looking at our schedule, the timeline, who knows? I was listening to BP Earthwatch talking about, you know, making sure you have silver and gold on hand for the collapse of what's coming. I don't know if we could honestly prepare for what's really coming, which is the magnetic pole shift. If that can happen as early as late 2026, that's what I would be focusing on, not taxing the billionaires. That's not really a priority in my mind. I think I might actually just start skipping some of those posts. We'll see. See, any mimetic structure that inhibits biological reproduction must necessarily transfer to the minds of those who do reproduce, or it will die out. They target the youth especially because their mental firewalls are not yet strong. Leftism is a mimetic parasite optimized for host sterilization. Every core tenet leads to the same endpoint. You know, and this is along the lines of Jesus when he said, beware of the leaven of the Pharisees, for a little leaven leavens the whole loaf. There's a parallel with leaven to viruses and parasites. You know, there are parasites that literally get into your brain and rewire them to, you know, behavior that benefits the parasite and not the host. There's one in particular called Toxoplasma gondii, which is a parasite that mice get. And it gets in and it rewires their brains so that they're not afraid of cats and they're attracted to cat urine, so that because that parasite, the only way that it can spread is when the cat eats the mouse. Doctrines are very similar to that. So, you know, like these kids who and ideas, it's almost spiritual. Spirits almost, it almost seems as though spirits travel on words, you know. When somebody is convinced about something, and I see this being a big part of the mark of the beast, because when we look at the mark of the beast and the mark of the 144,000, it seems very simple on the surface. You know, the mark of the 144,000 is the Lamb's father's name. The mark of the beast is the mark of the beast. You know, it's the mark is on the forehead and the right hand, which, when you study the scripture in a hermeneutic perspective, that implies that the forehead is where your decisions are made, where the things that you believe reside. That makes sense, right? And the right hand is the hand of blessing. So what it seems to be saying is that the mark of the beast is going to be a belief. And after all that we've seen over the last 4 years, or even longer, 8 years, this whole woke mind virus, it's like a parasite. It convinces people to basically eliminate their fear and run towards danger, right? The Bible says that the adversary, as a roaring lion, walketh about seeking whom he may devour. Well, this woke mind virus, this parasite, causes people to head straight towards that lion. That seems to be like, that's the mark of the beast right there, is it causes people to walk to their destruction rather than to safety. And we see this on many levels. I think that's what Elon's saying here. Any mimetic structure that inhibits biological reproduction. So he's talking about reproduction here. Obviously, transgender issues are a big part of his life, because one of his children got tricked and he got lied to. So this is very close for him. Biological reproduction must necessarily transfer to the minds of those who do the reproducing, or it will die out. Yeah. All right, moving on. More Somali stuff. 25-year-old illegal immigrant from Mali stabbed 3 women, including a pregnant one. Oh, man, that is heartbreaking. On the Paris subway yesterday. The attacker had previously been sentenced for sexual assault and had been issued a deportation order earlier this year. As usual, his deportation wasn't executed due to lack of consular documents, and he was released from migrant detention after the maximum retention period and allowed to roam the streets. You want the crime to stop, you got to get rid of the people doing it. Oh, this is good. Okay, this is where it starts to get fun. The Quality Learning Center for Kids Who Can't Read Good. So this is a legitimate picture from Nick Shirley's investigation. This is one of the daycare centers that they visited that was receiving, I think it was $2.5 million. And if you just read the name, and he was making a big deal about this in his document, on his piece covering this. Quality Learning Center for Kids Who Can't Read Good. It's supposed to be Quality Learning Center. In other words, you've got idiots training idiots because they can't even read right. So you're telling me you're gonna train my child how to read? Teach kids who can't read good by teaching them how not to spell right. Yeah. Elon Musk, Zoolander in real life. Learning Center. Word of the year. All right. I wanted data before any comment. So this is from Wilford Riley. I wanted data before any comment. Got some. This strikes me as non-ideal immigrant population. Welfare use rates in Minnesota by household with children. Any welfare, cash welfare, food stamps, and Medicare. Yeah. Yeah, one phone number led to Waltz's office. That's interesting. Someone should write an alternative historical novel where Americans are the first to master the automobile, the first in what? The first in flight to harness the atom, the first to land on the moon, but just keep going and never open our borders to the entire third world for 6 years. I don't get that one. From Mario Nalfall, Elon reposted Somali ballot harvesting expose in Minnesota. Is that expose or expose? In Minnesota was suppressed. Then the fraud exploded. In September 2020, James O'Keefe, Project Veritas, dropped undercover footage alleging a massive ballot harvesting racket in Elon Omar's Minnesota district. I remember that. Yeah. Paid operatives illegally scooped absentee ballots from elderly Somali immigrants, stuffing envelopes and even bragging on Snapchat about hauling 300 for city council hopeful Jamal Osman. Whistleblower Omar Jamal spilled that it was an open secret with Omar's crew, like staffer Ali Gainey, coordinating the cash field scheme, exploiting vulnerable folks for DFL power plays. Yeah. Project Veritas. Yeah, so there was fraud more than in other, more than just in Georgia. Because Georgia was in the news recently for having fraudulently counted 315,000 votes. Yeah. Let's see. From the Seattle Times, reposted by Elon, the prospect of a state income tax on millionaires has already got some of the state's richer residents talking about leaving. Everybody's leaving Washington. Washington is really, from what I understand of Washington, it's very heavily Republican because there's so much country out there. But due to the density of voters in Seattle, most of their policies go Democratic, and they also have mail-in voting. So who knows if they're actually even properly counting the Republican votes out there. Yeah. So you get some of these millionaires leaving. Maybe that'll change. Maybe it'll flip back to a Republican state. Has it ever been a Republican state? I don't know. I just know they got a lot of countryside because they've got a lot of mountains, a lot of mountain people, and a lot of cities that are, I don't want to say hillbilly, but that tend to be more heavily Republican. A big horse community. We do a lot of shows out in Washington, horse shows and stuff, county fairs. Alrighty. Mass migration from the third world is pro-rape policy. So from William Meyer, in Sweden, nearly 2/3 of rapes are committed by first and second generation immigrants. The authors of the study were previously investigated by Sweden's Ministry of Education for failing to sufficiently evaluate how their research on immigrant rape would reduce exclusion and improve integration of immigrants. Oh. Mass migration from the third world is a pro-rape policy. Seems like it. Okay, let's skip some of these. What is this? Racist.
Marriage, and I agree this is an issue. This is an issue that needs greater awareness on. Virginity testing, forced marriages, and the freedom of women must be forced marriage must be prevented, and the freedom of women must be protected at all times. However, the way to redress this is not to empower the state to ban adults from marrying each other, not least because I don't think it would be effective or enforceable. Instead, the matter needs to be approached as a health awareness issue and a cultural issue where women are being forced against their will to undergo marriage. In doing so, it is important to recognize for many people this is a highly sensitive issue, and in discussing it, we should try to step into the shoes of those who perhaps are not from the same culture as ours, to better understand why the practice continues to be so widespread. An estimated 35 to 50% of all sub-Saharan African populations either prefer or accept cousin marriages, and it is extremely common in the Middle East and in South Asia. The reason the practice is so common is that ordinary people see family intermarriage overall as something that is very positive, something that helps build family bonds and helps put families on a more secure financial foothold.
I don't know about that.
However,
genetic
as is well
mutations.
documented, it is not without health risks.
A lot of the changes throughout the millennia, centuries, decades, a lot of the changes in regards to who you can marry, who can you can produce children with, and stuff like that, is because of genetic mutations. Mental issues, cancers, disabilities, a lot of that kind of stuff. Initially when Adam and Eve were in the garden, I know it's an uncomfortable thing to talk about and think about because the culture we live in today, but who else were they producing children with? Think about it. You start with two individuals to multiply and fill the earth. How's that going to happen? I mean, it's not like Adam and Eve had, millions of children. At some point in time, the children had to be producing offspring with themselves, unless there was another bloodline, which, there could be. We do know the Watchers came down and produced Nephilim, so there was some intermingling of a different genetic bloodline. But before that happens, it seemed as though it was business as usual. It was God's design, which I imagine with a perfectly pure bloodline, it was probably fine. But due to the manipulation, and honestly, it could be because of the Nephilim mixing their blood for why it's an issue. So a lot of the laws and a lot of the reason for, banning that kind of stuff is blood based. And it's interesting. I wanted to bring this up because blood is really a big topic when you're thinking about what it was that Yeshua did. So it's so important to understand the importance of blood. He had pure blood. However he came about existing, one thing I think we can all agree on is he did not have any genetic mutation. He had perfect blood, and it was that perfect blood that was sacrificed for us that redeemed us to himself, redeemed us to God. And, I think about that when I think about these different things. It's just like, I'm not advocating for incest in any way, shape, or form, which it seems as though maybe this guy might be leaning towards that direction based on this deport this retard instantly. There's a reason why things are the way they are. So yeah. Anyway, I was just thinking about that with, the importance of blood and keeping it pure. Incest, just the blood is too likely to mutate in the offspring.
Helps build family bonds and helps put families on a more secure financial foothold. However, as is well documented, it is not without health risks for the children of those relationships, some of whom will be born out of wedlock. Instead of stigmatizing those who are in cousin marriages or those inclined to be, a much more positive approach would be to facilitate advanced genetic test screening for prospective married couples, as is the case in all Arab countries in the Persian Gulf, and more generally to run health education programs targeting those communities where the practice is most common. I would therefore urge the House to vote against this motion and to find a more positive approach to addressing the issues that are caused by first cousin marriages, including the health risks and the consequences of modern conflicts and displacement of population around the world. Thank you.
All right. I mean, I get what he's saying. Is that such a common practice in other countries that this is kind of like the suicide empathy approach to where why can't we do testing and, see if there's going to be a problem from this kind of a union? I don't know. I think it's honestly just simpler to ban family marriages. It's just our bloodline is so polluted now. I don't know. I kind of get it, but at the same time, I also wonder if I'm not being like the suicide empathy. It's hard for the West to comprehend this kind of thing. This is actually very common in other countries. Part of the reason why there's probably I don't know if I can actually speak to. I don't know if this is going to sound bad or not, but oh well. Could be a reason why some of them are idiots. Maybe the too much inbreeding has made the rest of the world stupid. And this guy's advocating for it. I don't know if that's true, but I think you know what I mean. I honestly think that we should probably just stick with even. I don't even think Louisiana should allow you to marry your first cousin, even though it's allowed, just because of the risk of problems, even just genetically weak. Hopefully, all that stuff is coming to an end here soon with the return of Christ. We'll see. All right, this guy's playing Fortnite on an airplane thanks to Starlink. Let's see, this is Elon Musk. What's he saying?
Where you'll see the biggest outcry is from the Democrats who are, they don't want the waste and fraud to be turned off because it is a gigantic magnet to attract illegal immigrants and have them stay in the country. And I mean, you see some of the crazy stuff, like where money from FEMA, which is meant, FEMA is an agency that's meant to take care of Americans in distress. And a bunch of their money was being sent to pay for luxury hotels in New York for illegal immigrants. And that was happening even after the president was elected, and even after he signed an executive order saying that needs to stop. So we actually made sure that money did stop going, because it's outrageous that American taxpayer money is spent on luxury hotels for illegals. But you have to say, why was that being done? It was because the Democrats are trying to import voters, basically.
Yes. I agree.
Yeah. And that's also why there's no voter ID needed. In fact, in California and New York State, you're not allowed to show voter ID. Mm-hmm. Doesn't that seem insane?
Insane.
Yeah.
I'd say that as a New Yorker. It's insane.
Yeah, insane.
Yep. Insanity. All right. This moon base stuff, I almost wonder. So he says, we're going to build a moon base. Awesome. I almost wonder, and when in seal number 7, one of the trumpets is a mountain-sized, something the size of a mountain falling into the ocean and killing a third of the life of the ocean. I almost wonder if it's not part of this moon base program. Maybe while they're shipping stuff up and preparing it for the moon, if that's not what falls into the ocean. Just a guess on my part. What we got here? More election fraud.
FBI agents carried out boxes of files from Ultimate Home Health Services in Bloomington Thursday morning. The state suspended its license this month after discovering alleged fraud in its Integrated Community Supports Program, or ICS. The door is broken there, and federal prosecutors say Minnesota's entire Medicaid program seems broken.
What we see in Minnesota is not a handful of bad actors committing crimes. It's a staggering industrial scale fraud.
Prosecutors charged 6 people with fraud Thursday, but none yet in ICS. They say Minnesota did a bad job of creating guardrails, so the state became a target for fraud, even by people from out of state. For the first time, they charged 2 men accused of fraud tourism, coming from Philadelphia, setting up shell businesses, then billing Minnesota from back home. In all, the state has declared 14 programs as high risk, and those programs have cost $18 billion since 2018.
And the funny thing about the way they went about doing the fraud is it was so massively blatant that they could have avoided detection by simply running actual daycares, even if they had just a few children there. A lot of them were, registered to have 74 children, 124 children, even if they had 10 children, so that when somebody came by investigating, they could have said, yeah, we got kids right here at the daycare. That probably would have alleviated suspicion, but they didn't even do that. There was 0 kids. And I think that's maybe inbreeding is part of the problem.
So how much of that is fraud?
That's the $18 billion question. The answer is far too much.
So far, prosecutors have proved about $350 million in fraud.
Wow.
But they say that's just the tip of the iceberg. First Assistant U.S. Attorney Joe Thompson said a significant portion of the $18 billion could be fraudulent.
When I say a significant amount, I'm talking on the order of half or more. But we'll see. When I look at the claims data and the providers, I see more red flags than I see legitimate providers.
Important to note, they say there is no evidence that any of the people they've charged with fraud have been radicalized, and no money has gone to any terrorist organizations.
Unless you consider the Democrats a terrorist organization. Sometimes I wonder. Breaking, the Irish government has announced their intention to ban anonymous social media accounts. That seems like good news. They want all accounts to be ID verified. No, that seems like a bad idea. And they want to introduce under 16 ban, similar to Australia. Yeah, so they want to start identifying people. This is a terrible idea. They want to be able to identify people so that they can prosecute them. Elon says what they actually want is to imprison and bankrupt those they disagree with. Yeah. Yep. Trader Tim Waltz. Let's see. He owns 3 Somali daycares in Minnesota. Haha, let the memes roll in. The Somali pirates watching Somali daycare owners make millions without even firing a shot. Well, the reason for the call today, John, so this is from Wolves of Wall Street. The reason for the call today, John, is something just came across my desk, John. It is perhaps the best thing I've seen in the last 6 months. The company is Quality Learning Center, a cutting-edge children's daycare center located in the heart of Minneapolis. That's fun. I think that's called the Wolves of Wall Street. Where isn't he selling like something that like penny stocks that are completely worthless? So it's the same thing here. Just in, native Minnesotans are threatening to open up their own daycare facilities if arrests don't start happening for daycare fraud. Fair point. Yeah. Quality Learning Center. Okay, what's this? Come here.
Turns out that the Quality Learning Center, supposed to be the Quality Learning Center, has received 13 violations and has been investigated multiple times just in the last 4 years by the Department of Human Services in Minnesota. And all of this is public record information. Anybody can find it by just typing the address 1411 Nicollet Avenue. And immediately I found this public information from the Department of Human Services in Minnesota. This checks out to be the spot. It's a child care center, total capacity 99. And as you guys can see, these are all the list of various violations and investigations of this place. Since May 9th, 2022, they've been investigated and received violations over 13 different times. For things like children did not have daily access to interest areas, areas that are used by children are not in good repair, crib mattresses and/or sheets did not meet the safety requirements. They even got a violation because the program did not report a death, serious injury, fire, or emergency properly. Obviously, the state has been looking into this place for a while, so it makes you question why didn't they notice the amount of fraud there. All it took was Nick Shirley pulling up to the place and seeing that there's no children there to determine that obviously something is wrong here. You have people coming from the state 13 different times in the last 4 years and they didn't notice this? Obviously, this is something that needs to be looked into to see just how much did state and city officials play a role in all of this fraud.
Yeah. Why did they still receive funding and keep their license after so many violations and Zoolander level obvious fraud? Promoting fraud. Shame on her. So let's see.
Hennepin County Attorney Mary Moriarty. There are reports that the Trump administration is planning to send ICE agents here to the Twin Cities to target our neighbors of Somali descent. This is part of a recent pattern to single out our Somali community members. This is
Are they legal?
The idea that if they spew hatred, it will divide us. But we won't let that happen. There are no roving gangs of Somali people in this community harassing, threatening, doing anything to any of our community members. And let me repeat that again, because I've heard this often. There are no roving gangs of Somalis targeting.
Yeah, because they don't need to be pirates in order to get the money. You just give it to them. $18 billion, more than they make in their whole country.
Or harassing or doing anything inappropriate to any community members. Those are simply lies. It is not true. Our office at the Hennepin County Attorney's Office here will not assist in any way, shape, or form in any of these ICE raids.
ICE raids. Why can't they just like admit like, holy crap, this is a problem. We're going to assist in any way possible.
From our small business owners to our healthcare workers, to our Lyft and Uber drivers, to children growing up in Cedar Riverside and families shopping at the Carmel Mall. Our Somali community members are what makes Minneapolis one of the finest places in the world to live. We will not let Trump's hatred divide us.
Trump's
we will
hatred?
stand side by side with our
So now this is
Somali
a Trump
community
issue?
members.
Shame on her. Moriarty is responsible for the subsequent rape. Agreed. Breaking news from the FBI on rampant Somali fraud in Minnesota. Things are about to get much worse for the Somali fraud criminals and their enablers. This is from Benny Johnson, reposted by Elon Musk. He says, I just spoke with a senior FBI source who tells me that the agency has surged investigative criminal units into Minneapolis and predicts public takedowns of Somali fraudsters soon. The official told me they are keenly aware of Nick Shirley's investigation, and it tracks with ongoing FBI criminal work in the area, which Nick Shirley did kind of allude to that when he went to the meeting where the Republicans were presenting information on the fraud. It was like the 11th meeting they'd had. Billions in stolen federal dollars through fraudulent businesses. These are serious federal crimes which may result in severe fines, decades of prison sentences, and potential deportations. The official directed me to the recent 78 criminal indictments against Somali fraudsters for stolen COVID payments as an example of what is to come. I hope they're able to track down where all the money went, because that'll be interesting to see what that reveals. I asked the official about the Act Blue donations to Democrat candidates from the fraudulent Somali daycares. The official directed me to the ongoing FBI Act Blue criminal investigation and said the agency will follow the money. Well, there you go. Act Blue is under criminal investigation by the FBI for fraudulent payments that may break American election law. The official said to expect more FBI action very soon. Good. It's about time. Start seeing. Elon says now for the find out part of the fuck around and find out. Lots of this stuff is about. So yeah, all this stuff. Where in Minnesota tribes? So we're going to start skipping some of this stuff because obviously there's just fraud going on. Let's see what else we got. Let's see. What is this case? Special moment for to end the year on. I carry on to the same passion, commitment, and hunger as always to reach my goals. Thank you to everyone who supported me this year. Oh. Cristiano Ronaldo. Minnesota fraud scheme. So that's from Cash. I guess we could read that. This might be the last thing we read on this Minnesota stuff. All right, case update. Minnesota fraud scheme. The FBI is aware of recent social media reports in Minnesota. However, even before the public conversation escalated online, the FBI had surged personnel and investigative resources to Minnesota to dismantle large-scale fraud schemes exploiting federal programs. Fraud that steals from taxpayers and robs vulnerable children will remain a top FBI priority in Minnesota and nationwide. To date, the FBI dismantled a $250 million fraud scheme that stole federal aid meant for vulnerable children during COVID. The investigation exposed sham vendors, shell companies, and large-scale money laundering tied to the Feeding Our Future network. You know what I think about when I see this stuff is why aren't, if they were able to get this much money from the government, why aren't people actually building legitimate businesses and taking advantage of the money that was obviously available to provide these services? I mean, I'm sure they could probably use some good daycares. And if you're getting, $2.5 million, $4 million from the government, you should be able to provide a pretty darn good daycare or healthcare facility for that matter. Shame on us for not finding these opportunities. These are missed opportunities for people. Of course, it may be that you and I wouldn't have access to this money, which would be interesting to see what the investigation yields as a result of this, because it may be that, only the Somali people were approved for this money. It'd be interesting to see if normal people were turned down for getting licenses and funding from these grants. Let's see. The case led to 78 indictments and 57 convictions. Defendants included Abi Wahab, Ahmed Mohamud, Ahmed Ali, Hussein Farah, Abdullah Noor. All right, a bunch of these different people charged with roles ranging from wire fraud to money laundering and conspiracy. These criminals didn't just engage in historic fraud, but tried to subvert justice as well. Abinamajab, Mohammed, Noor, and others were charged for attempting to bribe a juror with $120,000 in cash. Those responsible pleaded guilty and were sentenced, including a 10-year prison term and nearly $48 million in restitution in related cases. The FBI believes this is just the tip of a very large iceberg. We will continue to follow the money and protect the children, and this investigation very much remains ongoing. Furthermore, many are also being referred to immigration officials for possible further denaturalization and deportations proceedings where eligible. Interesting, of course. Doesn't sound super legit. BLS data confirms home health aides as the fastest growing U.S. occupation with a 10% surge to over 500,000 in 2024. It's mostly Medicaid funded. This is Elon Musk keeps referring to Zoolander for kids who can't read good. Quality Leering Center. So Zoolander Leering. Oh, this is good. This is from an interview I watched with Ted Cruz and Elon Musk.
And the single biggest thing that they're worried about is that DOGE is going to turn off fraudulent payments of entitlements. I mean, everything from Social Security, Medicare, unemployment, disability, Small Business Administration loans, turn them off to illegals. This is the crux of the matter.
Yep.
Okay. This is the thing that why they really hit my guts and want me to die.
And do you think that's billions, hundreds of billions? What do you think the scale is of that?
I think across the country, it's well north of 100 billion, maybe 200 billion. By using entitlements fraud, the Democrats have been able to attract and retain vast numbers of illegal immigrants.
And buy voters.
And buy voters, exactly. They basically bring in, 10, 20 million people who are beholden to the Democrats for government handouts and will vote overwhelmingly Democrat, as has been demonstrated in California. This is
it's an election strategy.
Yes.
It's power.
Yes. And it doesn't take much to turn the swing states blue. I mean, often a swing state might be won by 10, 20,000 votes.
Sure.
So if the Dems can bring in 200,000 illegals and over time get them legalized, not counting any cheating that takes place, because there is some cheating, but even without cheating, if you bring in illegals that are 10x the voter differential in a swing state, it will no longer be a swing state.
Right.
And the Dems will win all the swing states, just a matter of time, and America will be permanent, deep blue socialist state. The House, the Senate, the presidency, and the Supreme Court will all go hardcore Dem. They will then further cement that by bringing in even more aliens, so you can't vote your way out of it.
Yeah.
Their objective is to make it
one-party socialist state, and it'll be much worse than California, because at least California is mitigated by the fact that someone can leave California.
Right, you can go to Texas.
Yeah, exactly.
That's what
but
you
they're
did.
going to make everywhere California but worse.
I really hope things happen in 2026 the way they look like they're going to happen in 2026, because the future with the way that these things are going, I'm glad it's being exposed, but it makes me wonder how much are we missing? Let's see. Elon Musk. Government-funded non-government organizations are one of the biggest sources of fraud. Indeed.
We saw there's just a tremendous amount of money being sent to non-governmental organizations. But actually, this, by the way, is I think one of the biggest sources of fraud in the world is government-funded non-governmental organizations. This is a gigantic fraud loophole where the government can give money to an NGO, and then there are no controls over that NGO. So they've given billions of dollars, in fact, we estimate tens of billions of dollars to NGOs that are essentially scams.
Sarah, are you talking about me? I'm a fucking whiny ninny. I am. I'm sorry. I'll stop whining.
What we saw there is just a tremendous amount of money being sent to non-governmental organizations. But actually, this, by the way, is I think one of the biggest sources of fraud in the world is government-funded non-governmental organizations. This is a gigantic fraud loophole where the government can give money to an NGO, and then there are no controls over that NGO. So they've given billions of dollars, in fact, we estimate tens of billions of dollars to NGOs that are essentially scams.
Wow.
What we saw there is just a tremendous amount of money being...
I think we're looping. Yeah, it's a proxy. It's just basically a proxy to get money from the government in the government. More Somali stuff. That's Nick Shirley doing his thing. Don't hate media. Become the media. Yep. China's maglev hits 700 kilometers an hour in 2 seconds. Good gravy. Planning 1,000 kilometers while America argues about fixing potholes. China just tested a maglev platform that accelerates to 435 miles an hour in 2 seconds. Good Lord. That's exciting technology. Here's a list of the news outlets who have not covered Nick Shirley's fraud story. New York Times, CNN, Washington Post, MSNBC, NPR, USA Today, Reuters, Axios, ABC News, and PBS. Every single one of them wrote stories on Elon Musk's hand gestures. Do you get it yet? Yeah, that's from Matt Van Swal. Doge designer, breaking, trust in media has fallen to its lowest level ever at just 28%. At the same time, X recently recorded an all-time high. Let's see. Corruption. More corruption. This is crazy. 2022, disabled Somali whistleblower came forward. Ooh, we like whistleblowers. 30 seconds.
All of a sudden, there was a boom, and people were buying very expensive homes and posting about those homes.
Where was all the money coming from?
Everybody knew, but nobody had the courage to speak about it because they understood the repercussions.
Well, see, and that's the thing, though, is like you're risking, if you're here legally and you're Somali and you're covering for the fraud, you're risking your own citizenship.
So I decided to speak out.
Afraid of repercussions for speaking out in the Twin Cities, Abdi went on a trip to Africa early this year. When he got there, he says he was attacked and pepper sprayed for information he put online regarding feeding our future.
All of a sudden, there was a boom, and
yeah. Nick, let's see. What do we got saying on here?
Nick, when I was your age, I used to watch all the local news stations, and every local news operation had a guy, a roving reporter, who would go around and find waste, fraud,
I remember those
and
days.
abuse. Are there local reporters like that in your area, and why do you think they weren't doing the work that you did?
I don't know. They're scared of being called nowadays because it's Somalians that are committing this fraud. People are scared to be called Islamophobic, racist, in which has nothing to do with what's going on, because fraud is fraud. It doesn't matter if it's a black person, white person, Asian person, Mexican. Fraud is fraud, and we work too hard simply just to be paying taxes and enabling fraud to be happening.
Nick, when I was your age, I used to watch all the local news stations, and every local news operation had a guy, a roving reporter, who would go around and find waste, fraud, and abuse. Are there local reporters like that in your area, and why do you think they weren't doing the work that you did?
Oh, these looping videos get me sometimes. Starting in 1973, my mom ran a home daycare. 6 kids, 0 to 5 years old, 8 to 10 hours a day, mostly by herself for decades. Her kids still visit her. She never got $1 million government grant for it. States that fund. See, this is my point. My mom did the same thing. My mom ran a daycare several times, and it usually cost her more than she ever made. She just loved the kids. Even to this day, she still goes and finds ways that she can take care of kids and daycares and stuff like that. Usually it's with the church. States that fund fraud in the name of compassion will get fraud alone. Turns out importing tens of millions of foreigners and using our schools to teach their children that the American people are oppressors was a really bad idea. Elon says suicidal, referring to God Sad's Suicidal Empathy, his book on suicidal empathy. Elon Musk, you are the media now. Nick Shirley's taking that very seriously. Thanks to you, by Elon purchasing X, a few things happened. And this is part of him being an olive tree. I honestly believe that at this point, after all we've been through with what has happened as a result of him buying Twitter. Unlocked free speech on the internet. All other social media platforms had to follow suit or lose viewership. News can be released immediately to millions uncensored from the scene versus going through the mainstream media newsrooms. Fake news is held accountable by the people. I think this is the oil from the olive trees. Both Donald Trump and Elon Musk did it. Donald Trump started Truth Social. Elon Musk bought Twitter, and both of them every single day are on these platforms highlighting things that are true. Information we got via proxy previously. This to me says that Jesus is on his way. Right? We're at a point in time where we get to observe and see fraud and corruption, really see Satan. What this is doing is it's exposing Satan, exposing the devil so that he can ultimately be destroyed. Really, that's what this is doing. It's ultimately exposing Satan. And Christ is on his way. He's about to get his butt kicked into that bottomless pit. All right, let me get this straight. Somali immigrants get more tax fraud stuff. What is this? One fraudulent business misspelled leering. Yeah. Big news. More fraud. What do we got here? Massive corruption.
There is a massive amount of corruption, but it is circuitous. So what happens is there's money that, obviously it's your taxpayer money, that is then sent to various government organizations who then send it to NGOs, which an NGO is a non-governmental organization, but obviously if it's a government-funded non-governmental organization.
This was before they won the election.
It's just an organization. It's just a government. And effectively there's a giant fraud loophole, which is that the government can send money to an NGO that is then no longer governed by the laws of the United States. So they'll send the money overseas to one NGO, then it'll go through a bunch of them, and then I'm highly confident that a bunch of that money then comes back to the United States and lands in the pockets of the people you just mentioned.
Yep.
But it is a circuitous route. It's not like it doesn't go directly, but let's just say that there's a lot of strangely wealthy members of Congress. Where I just can't, I'm trying to connect the dots of how did they become rich while how'd they get 20 million if they're earning 200,000 a year?
Right.
It sounds,
or 200 million when they only make 176,000 a year, Pelosi.
Nobody can explain that. So something's, yeah, we're going to try to figure it out and certainly stop it from happening. It's
an ongoing process. He tried. He said he doesn't think it can be fixed. He can only make small, incremental, positive changes. It's that big. It's that overwhelming. Literally, it's going to take a reset of the entire world to weed Satan out of our system. Minnesota daycare fraud by Somalis is nothing new. Oh, news from 2018.
Agencies closed Baraka Child Care Center yesterday morning while investigators executed a search warrant. It's one of 10 being investigated for financial misconduct of the state's child care assistance program. WCCO's Jennifer Merrily shares where that money would have gone instead.
Nearly 2,400 kids are on the waiting list for Minnesota's child care assistance program. It helps low-income families pay for child care. Daycares are given money per child. But right now, state agencies are investigating financial fraud at 10 different centers, including Baraka Child Care Center in Minneapolis.
So where there's been these totally fraudulent operators and stealing money. And so high time. And they should crack down on more.
As part of the investigation, the BCA and Secret Service spent hours at this home in Columbia Heights, combing through it and collecting evidence. A relative told WCCO.
They are good family, they work hard, that's
So is
all.
this how they
The raid at
started?
Baraka focuses on
They realized by starting these daycares, they could get money. They were winning grants.
fraudulent billing of the state assistance program. A child care provider investigations unit formed in 2014 to investigate similar cases has already closed 12 child care centers.
So the latest child care scam has been to have 100 people enrolled, 100 kids enrolled in your program, have 10 show up, bill for the 100.
That happened in several cases that resulted in a conviction. In one, the criminal complaint reveals investigators set up cameras to capture kids who entered and exited. Over a 2-week period in 2014, the daycare billed for 950 children who did not attend the center, resulting in $51,000 of fraud just for that time period.
There are people who have severe needs that we can't take care of because there's just not enough money, and yet money goes out the back.
Well.
Investigators haven't released any details about what was found in yesterday's raid. The Office of the Inspector General said it will continue to investigate fraud in the program, saying child care fraud is especially egregious because in addition to exploiting taxpayer money, it harms the families and children the program is intended to help.
You know, one of the things that sets Elon Musk apart and the reason why his businesses are so successful is he's very, very good at eliminating anything that slows down progress. I imagine, so they uncover this in 2018. It's now what, 2026 almost? Like we're days away from 2026. They've had plenty of time to put a stop to this, and it only got worse. What does that tell you about those in charge? Either they're powerless or they don't really care.
Hey, Rodrigo Gorman, can I ask you why you deleted the files?
Have you got anything to say about deleting the files involving the abuse of young children?
Come on, Rodrigo.
What have you got to say about ideal care?
What about Jossie? Did Jossie, any of the children go missing out Jossie's home? Did any of the children go missing out Jossie's home? Can you answer that question, Rodrigo?
Ireland, eh?
You need to resign.
So apparently fraud is global, similar to what's currently happening in Minnesota. An investigation at childcare facilities in Ireland last year revealed that 7 of the top 10 highest paid companies responsible for looking after vulnerable children are operated by African or Muslim migrants. Interesting. Then there's the food for children fraud in the state and the healthcare fraud in that state. Yep. It kind of makes you wonder, is any of the money going to the people? For the people, by the people. What is this? Nothing. Just a video. X is for the people, for their freedom of speech, by the people, used every day. Not by elites, but by those seeking truth. Yeah. The rabbit hole. They should at least establish photo voter ID requirements. Republicans have Congress, the Supreme Court, and the presidency. So what is stopping them? Yeah. Filibuster. The reaction to Dodge always meant they were over the target on widespread fraud. Yeah, Doge must be made permanent and continue exposing every dollar of fraud or waste. Yeah, you know, the problem, though, is when Elon was the head, the face, Musk derangement syndrome just skyrocketed to the moon. They were burning down service centers, shooting up service centers, burning random Teslas just because Musk's name is attached to Tesla. Yes, indeed. They torment the world, that's for sure. Just got a DM from an 88-year-old that says she bought a new Tesla Model Y in September and uses full self-driving constantly. Can confirm. Let's see. Terrence Williams, slap in the face to every American. Sick to my stomach. Let's see. I'm an American small business owner in the food industry, and I'm beyond angry. Okie dokie. Why? Why are you angry?
Right now, I'm telling everybody right now, you might be offended watching this video, but I don't give a damn, okay? So, I want to know. Somebody got some explaining to do, okay? We got so many veterans who can't even get a small business loan.
Yeah.
We got so many Americans who were born in this country can't even get a small business loan. They can't even get a business grant. They can't get no money from the government at all.
Yeah.
And then these dirty ass Somalians come over here. Okay, not all of them, but the ones that's committing fraud. Those dirty ass Somalians come over here, haven't put any.
So either it's an inside job to where those in government are in on it and getting kickbacks, or it's for lack of trying, which that's a very valid thing. Like I said, I have family members who are perfectly capable of working, answering phone, generating content for YouTube. I mean, there's a lot of ways to make money in the world right now. And they just, it's too overwhelming. They can't, and I get it. I get I get the being overwhelmed by lack of knowledge, but that's also one of the things, especially when it comes to veterans. There's a lot of veterans that, suffer from, mental blocks that prevent them from being able to pursue these things, where maybe the Somalis as a culture, are hardwired towards finding any source of money they can, even if it's fraudulently.
Working to this
another
country,
form of piracy.
Haven't paid any damn taxes, okay? Then they get millions and millions and millions on top of millions of dollars to start a business that don't even exist. Do you not know how many small business owners right now could use a damn loan, could use a government grant?
Yeah, I think we get the point. I agree with him. More outrage. Just stop caring whether they call you racist or not. They do that to scare away inquiries. Doing so used to work, but not anymore. Fraud is fraud, and it doesn't matter what race someone is. Ooh, what did he do here?
Governor Tim Walz is saying that you and others that are out there trying to expose this, you're doing it because you're white supremacists. What is your response to him?
Yeah, Tim wants votes. There are entire apartment complexes where white people have been pushed out of these apartment complexes because Somalians have taken over and they're inside of these towns like Minneapolis where they can go get votes from these people. And if you have 100,000 people that will vote for you because you're going to enable and let this stuff happen, and because you're going to call a white person racist for calling out facts, this is what's going to happen to a state like Minnesota. Minnesotans, they say Minnesota nice, but they are very upset. And I totally understand why they're upset, because they don't have a governor who's actually working for them. He's actually working against them.
Governor Tim Walz is saying that you and others that are out there trying to expose this, you're doing it because you're white supremacists. What is your response to him?
White supremacists. Biggest fraud in history.
What we saw there is just a tremendous amount of money being sent to non-governmental organizations. But actually, this, by the way, is I think one of the biggest sources of fraud in the world is government-funded non-governmental organizations. This is a gigantic fraud loophole where the government can give money to an NGO, and then there are no controls over that NGO. So they've given billions of dollars, in fact, we estimate tens of billions of dollars to NGOs that are essentially scams. What we saw there is just a tremendous amount of money being sent to non-governmental organizations. But actually, this, by the way, is I think one of the biggest sources of fraud in the world is government-funded non-governmental organizations. This is a gigantic fraud loophole.
Sorry, I got distracted trying to translate this foreign language somebody posted. Farsi. All right. Maybe later. Yeah, please keep your posts to English. Otherwise, we're just going to remove your post because it takes too much time and effort to try and translate them. Watchful, there's a good reason why some people don't try to make money. If you make too much money and you are on Social Security insurance or on VA benefits, you have too much to lose, namely health benefits. Yeah, that's a fair point. But at the same time, there's also people who could be making money who that doesn't apply to. I think you're right. It's difficult to speak in a way to cover all situations. I think the right thing to do is expose the fraud, fix the fraud, and redistribute the money in a better way. I don't know if that's going to happen before Christ comes back. We'll see. You know, if there is a rapture event, hopefully there is before the whole earth rotates. If there's not, and we're all still here and we have to deal with this into the future, hopefully it gets fixed. The loss of medical benefits that happens if you lose your SSI or your VA benefits, it's much larger than any amount you can make. True. Yeah, that's a valid point. Indeed. Let's see. Charlie Kirk was killed by a bisexual left-wing furry with a trans furry lover who wrote fascist catch on his ammo. District Attorney admits Minnesota Somali fraud has cost U.S. taxpayers nearly the entire GDP of Somalia. Okay, enough of this Minnesota stuff. I mean, like, this is dominating. Same thing with the NGO corruption. Okay, we get the point. As Elon and Bukele have repeatedly articulated, destroying the corrupt judiciary is necessary first step to tackling the corruption and criminality. Leaving the corrupt pro-crime judiciary intact in its present state will undo every other potential accomplishment. So Elon, unfortunately, as President Bukele eloquently articulates, there's no other option. We must impeach to save democracy. Agreed. Start dealing with these activist judges. Just realize you can co-sponsor this bill too. You're not only lying to downplay that this is 5%, not 1 to 2, as you say. Your bill here was 8% over 50 million. Totally insane. It's not only unethical, unconstitutional, and un-American to seize acts. Oh yeah. HR 2912, the Oligarch Act, sponsorship and state proposed. We need to unrig our economy and make sure the ultra-wealthy pay their fair share to invest in working families. Yeah, that seems like a scam. Another scam. As if the wealthy don't pay enough as it is. I mean, sure. A lot of the wealthy take advantage. Most of them take it, from what I understand, not that I'm ultra wealthy. But I have talked to ultra wealthy and I've listened to ultra wealthy talk. Even Elon Musk, they take advantage of, legalities and loopholes, just like you and I would. When you go to, do your write-offs, you look for every little thing you can write off, even if you're skirting the line on, what constitutes a particular write-off, as if they do the same thing. A lot of wealthy people end up giving away a good majority of their money. So this idea, I think it's stupid. People get this idea like that they do this to Elon all the time, to where it's just like, oh, he's got, he's the first trillionaire. He's got $600 billion. If he were to distribute that evenly among everybody in the United States, he could end homelessness. And it's like, you realize we've spent trillions of dollars on homelessness and it still hasn't fixed the problem. It's like, people are idiots. Too much inbreeding. What does he say here? Fraud is so blatant. Man, this is just the day of fraud, I guess.
Many times over with USAID and other organizations, when they said, oh, well, this is going to help children, or it's going to help some disease eradication or something like that, I say, well, please connect us with this group of children so we can talk to them and understand more about their issue. We get nothing. But they don't even try to come up with a show orphan. It's sort of like, well, can we at least see a few kids? Like, where are they? If they're in trouble, we'd like to talk to them and talk to their caregivers. Okay, well, and then we get nothing as a response, because what we find is an enormous amount of fraud and graft. Very little of it actually gets to the kids, if anything at all. Many times over with USAID and other organizations, when they said, oh, well, this is going to help children, or it's going to help.
Yeah, that's the thing, is like, Suicidal empathy, just like, that's come up several times before, is they name these things in such a way that you think you're benefiting humanity when in reality you're just lining somebody's pockets and buying mansions and boats and airplanes. 2 years ago, a British woman distraught over the murder of 3 little girls tweeted that she didn't care if migrant hotels burned. Then she deleted it. She got 31 months in prison. Yesterday, Britain's leaders gave a hero's welcome and citizenship to an Egyptian man who's tweeted his desire to kill Jews, denied the Holocaust happened, called English people dogs and monkeys, said police should be killed, and that white people are a blight that needs to be wiped out by genocide. Never deleted any of it. I know we in the U.S. have a lot of our own problems too, but Britain has gone completely nuts. Do these politicians have any idea how insane this all looks to the rest of the world? That would have been the United States if it weren't for Donald Trump and Elon Musk. You may not agree with me on that. I wholeheartedly believe that that's where we were heading under the Biden administration. We have a 3.5-year period of time as a result of their work, and they're standing up, honestly. Still no coverage, and this is still no coverage. Let's see, whatever you incentivize will happen.
The Democrats attract and retain illegal immigrants by essentially paying them to come here, and then turning them into voters.
Yes.
So this is why the Democrats are so upset about the situation, because they're losing. If we turn off this gigantic money magnet for illegal immigrants, then they will leave, and they will lose voters.
That's a valid point in regards to a lot of these billionaires. A lot of the value is on paper, and not in actual cash in the bank. As if, where would you keep that much money if you had billions? You would, and ideally you'd want to open your own banks if that were the case. But in the case like Elon Musk, a lot of his money is in shares in the companies that he owns, and he continually reinvests and buys more shares because he can leverage those shares in ways that he doesn't leverage cash, and also it bypasses the whole taxation. And he does give away a lot of his money. He has a regular cadence of cashing out his shares to put it towards the betterment of mankind. And, whether it's starting companies, he's even come out and said he has his own charity that does not have his name on it, so that it can actually maximize the benefit towards the people that it's intended to help. Yeah, it's not as simple as just liquidating all of your shares in order to get all of that money. A lot of the times that amount of money doesn't even exist in circulation. The banks could never produce it. So instead, you take out a loan from the bank, say, I've got $600 billion in shares. Give me a loan for a couple $1 million. And, if I don't pay you back, you get a couple of shares. Yeah. Yep. Collateral. X obliterates legacy media. 106 million views versus 20 million newspaper readers. Yeah. Meet the hate preacher Abu Qatada, a.k.a. Osama bin Laden's ambassador in Europe. He invaded England on a fake passport and costs us $3 million in benefits. We also spent a decade trying to extradite him to Jordan. Interesting. Elon Musk is making the future exciting. Unfortunately, as President Bukele eloquently articulates, there's no other option. We must impeach to save democracy. Agreed. All right, we are almost done here. See if there's anything else. Turning off the money magnet. Pissing off the Dems. Uncle Timmy's Lyrian Center. Teaching to bags of potatoes. This one doesn't exactly require Sherlock Holmes to figure out, just someone who is brave and cares. here.
So these individuals tried to report the fraud that was happening in Ohio and then eventually came to me to say that we're watching providers rubber stamp paperwork for home health. So in Ohio, and there's many states like this, Pennsylvania and other states too, where you can go in and you can say my aging parent needs a home health care and I want to provide it. So the state will, as long as a doctor has approved it, continue to pay you. It could be for 10 hours, 12 hours, up to 24 when it's critical care. So you could sit at home without caring for an elderly parent who really doesn't need it, make about $75,000 to $90,000 a year. Now you add two parents, that's $180,000. Now you add your in-laws, $250,000. You continue to add this and you wonder, what are the services being provided? So a lot of providers came and said, fraud is occurring because we said we weren't going to rubber stamp this paperwork, so they went to other providers. Their home healthcare network saying, we'll make it worth your while. Well, sounds like a kickback to me. So we really need to investigate the Medicaid system and how much it's increased since the Somalian population came and who really needs critical care, because that's meant for our disabled, our elderly, and people who really need it, not to just live off our system. And that's what's happening in Ohio. I think it's ridiculous. I think it's despicable, but authorities are now looking at it from the Attorney General's office to the U.S. Attorney's office. I flagged them all because this is Ohio tax dollars and we have to take it seriously. I'm tired of people telling me, well, this is the way it's always been. It's subjective and we can't really check. No, you can. Audit America, audit Ohio now. And I'm pushing for that in every single state.
So this is Ohio attorney Mahek Cook confirms massive fraud in Ohio, another hotbed for Somalis. Elon says the fraud of your taxpayer money is happening nationwide and is liberally applied to attract illegal and some legal immigrants who will reliably vote Democrat. The more you look, the more you find, and you don't need to be a world-class detective to figure it out. Is there even a valid Democratic Party, or are all they illegal, led by a few corrupt politicians? Brazen daylight robbery. Yeah. Elon Omar's net worth. She went from 45,000 to 30 million. Interesting. Repost from Tim Pool. Saving the world is a choice. Nick woke up one day and decided he was going to fight. Gen Z needs more inspiration like this. Nick Shirley, a bit about me. Oh, this would be good. 23-year-old, 100% independent. Have posted a full YouTube video every week for the past 104 weeks. Helped expose the border crisis. First American to ever film inside CCOT. Brief President Trump in the White House about Antifa. Ended Tim Walz's career. Who is Nick Shirley? Where did he come from? And how's a 23-year-old so good at his job? That shit was on a Mahomesian level. That's right. Good on him. He's an inspiration. All right, more memes. This is disgusting. Gross. Disgusting. I'm sorry. Let's see. My lower bound guess for how much fraud there is nationally is 20% of the federal budget, which would mean about 1.5 trillion per year. Probably much higher. Yep. You wonder why we're $38 trillion in debt. Look at how much money is fraudulently given away. Legacy media is a Democrat propaganda machine. Kind of makes you wonder if this isn't how the end of this is how Satan works, and the part of the return of Christ is ending his systems, the beast systems. Perhaps we should start pronouncing it demon-crat. Demons. Views on Nick Shirley's Minnesota fraud video. Adam Smith was a genius. Border true. Let's see. The Democrats were just breaking the law, so all that was needed was enforcing the law. Biden and the Democrats claimed that in order to secure the border, they needed new laws. Since President Trump took office, we've had nearly zero releases of illegal aliens into our country. Yeah, laws existed. We just needed to enforce them. Vance, what's this about?
Cases out there where the Democrats and the media say, oh, this person was just an innocent father of 3, and then you find out, for example, I think this is the case that you're talking about. Back in 2019, an immigration judge looked at all the evidence, looked at all the data, and concluded that this allegedly innocent person that we sent to El Salvador was actually a member of an MS-13 gang. He had also committed some traffic violations. He had not shown up for some court dates. This is not exactly Father of the Year here. This is a person that we don't think should be in our country. Here's the most important point, though, Lawrence, is whatever the argument is, whatever the justification is, no one doubts, not even the crazy left-wing media criticize the idea that we could deport this person. They just took issue with the reasoning for why we deported this person. This was unquestionably an illegal alien. This was unquestionably a person who broke the laws to get into our country. This is unquestionably a person an immigration judge had found had zero right to be in the United States of America. We do not ask permission from far left Democrats before we deport illegal immigrants. We do the American people's business. And again, for the American people who are watching, this is such a weird, mistaken placement of priorities. We need to make our country stronger. We need to create jobs. We need to make our streets safer. What is it about congressional Democrats that get more angry at deporting violent gang members than they do at the victims of those violent gang members? I don't even understand where they're coming from. They've gone off the deep end, and they got to come back to reality.
I have to admit, J.D. Vance is growing on me. I didn't really like him initially because I didn't know anything about him. He just seemed to come out of left field, but the more I get to know him, the more I like him. Scott Adams breaks down everything that had to happen at the same time for us to finally understand the world. Yeah, the book of Revelation. Trump exposing the fake news plus winning 2024. Elon Musk buying Twitter, turning it into X. Doge with Mike Ben's cyber revealing NGO, USA distortion, censorship, industrial complex, international attacks on U.S. speech. Grok existing to summarize dense info, especially Ben's deep dives. Discovering color revolutions where were turned against America. Scott Adams says, we were this close to losing everything, and it almost seems like magic that all the right things happened at the same time. This is because that was the head wound. This tells us what the head wound was. It tells us that that America was one of the heads, that the head wound was everything that was happening to destroy America, and the fact that it was miraculously healed is because of everything that Donald Trump has been doing. It's very unlikely that all of those things would happen at the same time, but they did. Kind of amazing. Yes, this is a spiritual movement. This is initiated by Yeshua, who has been, I don't know how he's been doing it. That's the interesting thing, but he is the one who's credited with opening the seals. So I don't know if it's a matter of proclamation, if it's a matter of allowing spiritual things to happen. We know there's a spirit realm. We know that the spirit can affect things, and there has been a massive spiritual movement. And these events have been leading towards exposure. It's so interesting when you read Revelation 13 in light of what we've learned. All of these things. This is what most Christians are missing. This is what most people who aren't paying attention to what's happening in the world are missing. When you're not looking at these with a true spiritual eye, true spiritual discernment based on observation, not this mumbo jumbo. Stop listening to people who are telling you they're getting visions of bullshit. That's people, they claim to get visions. They claim to hear voices. They tell you junk. They don't tell you anything of any benefit. Just paying attention to what's happening and reading the scripture, you'll learn far more and you'll have far better understanding of what's coming in the future than constantly looking for special information from people who are claiming to be anointed. Those are false prophets. Jesus warned us about false prophets in the end times. They all know we're in the end times, and they're just guessing, and they're trying to get their name underwritten by those who will, subscribe to their channel, watch their content, and give them their attention when all they're doing is stealing your time and misleading you. It's terrible. This stuff is happening because we're living in the end times. We're going through the book of Revelation right now. It's literally happening. and I'm only able to cover a very small portion. I'm not that smart of a person. I'm really not. I'm sure I'm missing a lot of things, which I'm sure there's probably people out there. I imagine that there's 144,000 people out there. Maybe that's the reason why the 144,000 are the only ones who can learn the song. In the book of Revelation, it talks about the song changing. And it says that only the 144,000 can learn it. Maybe that's what it is. Maybe there's a limit to who can actually see what's going on. Maybe because they have the Lamb's Father's name in their forehead, it allows them to actually see these things. But it boggles my mind that people waste so much time with these false prophets who go, they're cold reading like freaking magicians on a stage. Oh, I'm getting this information. I get this sense that there's going to be an explosion somewhere, and there's going to be an earthquake, and there's going to be terrible weather. Charlatans. Anyway. All of these things had to happen, and the statistical probability of these things happening on their own are ridiculous. This is clearly a spiritual movement, but it's exciting. even though I rant about it, it's very exciting because at the end of the day, I hate that phrase. At the end of the day, in all honesty, at the end of the day, the reality is your redemption draws nigh. That's the cool thing. That's really the that's the whole point of all of this is our redemption draws nigh. And those of us who are not in darkness, we can see the trouble coming and hide ourselves. There's another benefit. Anyway, back to Elon Musk. Hopefully 60 Minutes reports on it soon. CBS still hasn't reported on Minnesota. Yeah, so basically nobody's reporting on Minnesota still. Minnesota Governor Walz signed a law to let illegals get driver's licenses. In 2023, Minnesota officials confirm it's now possible for them to vote. Walz is actively scamming elections. Yeah, what are they going to do about it? It's from 2018, Minnesota criminal prosecution against Somali daycare. In surveillance video, Somali parents would take their kids to the daycare, check them in, and then leave with them moments later. The owners of the daycare would then bill the state for a full day of childcare and give the parents kickback payments for being in on the fraud. Somali fraudsters have been stealing from taxpayers for years, and it's clear that the entire Somali community is in on it. That's terrible. From Michael Holstrom, I have some bad news. If you are rightfully upset about the daycare fraud in Minnesota, it is only one program. There are 14 programs identified as high risk by federal prosecutors. These are being called the Fraudy 14: Adult Companion Services, Adult Day Services, Adult Rehabilitative Mental Health Services, Assertive Community Treatment, Community First Services and Supports, Personal Care Assistance, Early Intensive Development and Behavioral Intervention for Autism, Housing Stabilization Services, Individualized Home Supports, Integrated Community Supports, Intensive Residential Treatment Services, Night Supervision Services, Non-Emergency Medical Transportation Services, Peer Recovery. I wonder if some of this stuff has been allowed in these states in order to cause God's people to move out of these areas. I just thought about this with the potential for the magnetic pole shift. If you go look, there's maps that show, and especially on Suspicious Observers, he's listed some of the areas that you want to avoid. Basically, the whole East Coast is going to get trashed by the magnetic pole shift. I wonder if there's not an influx of evil people allowed in order to push God's people out of these areas. Move to the West Coast, I guess. Colorado, and then to the west. Maybe. I don't know, just a guess. The deal was an even playing field, not extremely tilted in the other direction. They broke the deal, therefore there is no deal. The one exception, so this is from Matthew Schmitz. The one exception I found to the general exclusion of white males had begun life as a female. Harvard professor James Hankins explains why he's leaving. Let's see. In past years, this candidate would have risen immediately to the top of the applicant pool in 2021. However, I was told informally by a member of the admissions committee that meaning admitting a white male was not happening this year. In the same year, a certifiably brilliant undergraduate I had tutored, who was literally the best student at Harvard. He won the prize for graduating senior with the best overall academic record, was rejected from all the graduate programs to which he applied. He, too, was a white male. I called around to friends at several universities to find out why on earth he had been rejected. Whoops. Yeah, darn it. It was the same story, graduate admissions. So what is this? The deal was an even playing field, not extremely tilted in the other direction. They broke the deal, therefore there is no deal. I guess, okay. I mean, I get it what he's saying. It's talking about basically white oppression, racism against whites. What is this? Either standard practice, I think.
Many times over with USAID and other organizations, when they said, oh, well, this is going to help children, or it's going to help some disease eradication or something like that, I say, well, please connect us with this group of children so we can talk to them and understand more about their issue. We get nothing. But they don't even try to come up with a show orphan. It's sort of like, well, can we at least see a few kids? Like, where are they? If they're in trouble, we'd like to talk to them and talk to their caregivers. Okay, well, and then we get something as a response, because what we find is an enormous amount of fraud and graft. Very little of it actually gets to the kids, if anything at all. Many times over.
Yikes. Let's see. I'd rather be called a white supremacist than turn a blind eye to billions and Somali fraud. I'd rather be called a racist than cover up Muslim rape gangs. I'd rather be called transphobic than allow men to invade women's spaces and harm girls. These insults don't work anymore. Call us whatever you want. Fraud is fraud no matter who commits it. The truth is the truth no matter what slurs they call us. That's from Libs of TikTok. Nice. As should we all, Elon says. It's not just daycare, Somalis in Minnesota. Yep, we're aware of that. All right, what else? Homeland Security, DHS is on the ground in Minneapolis going door to door. The following exposure millions in fraud, same thing. Let's see. For years, people attacked Elon over government contracts won by SpaceX, contracts that saved taxpayers billions and literally rescued U.S. spaceflight. Yep. All right, getting close to the end here. Over 4 billion visits. Okay, we don't need to know about that. This is how voter fraud is done. From John Lefevre in a group chat with a bunch of smart, successful liberals who still don't understand how elections get stolen. I wanted to share in simple terms, this is what happens. Fill up the voter rolls with as many names as possible, including illegals, dead people, and residents who left the state. Legislate for unsolicited ballots to automatically be mailed out. Pay people per ballot to collect, fill out, sign, and send back, or dump these ballots in Dropbox. Here's how this works. Take a random low-income apartment building in PA or Georgia with 100 units. This is a demographic that doesn't vote and rarely checks their mails. Unsolicited ballots will be automatically sent to every single tenant or resident registered to that building, going back a decade or longer, so our 100-unit apartment building could receive 5 times as many ballots, most of which litter the mail room floor. Activist groups like Arabella recruit low-income residents to collect these ballots and pay them for every completed ballot without oversight or accountability. So these recruits can either laboriously track down the intended recipients and encourage them to vote legally, or they can collect as many blank ballots as possible, fill them out themselves, knowing they'll make thousands, and it's virtually impossible to get caught. These ballots end up in the mail or in a drop box where they will be counted alongside legitimate ballots, having never been verified or signature matched. It doesn't take a grand conspiracy, as the participant pawns are incentivized momentarily to cheat on their own accord, and there's no legal recourse, as the big money organizers have plausible deniability because they don't need to instruct or bear witness to any of the cheating. And this is why voter ID is so important. Mail-in ballots are evil, and we should all just go in person and vote on paper. It works. We get results the same day. All right. It's not just Somalis in Minnesota. The Dems opened up our nation to anyone who would come here and vote for them in exchange for our tax dollars. These are the places where no ID is required. Washington, Oregon, California, Nevada, let's see, what is that? Colorado. Is that Indianapolis, Montana? Geez. And the East Coast here. Huh. I don't know. Maybe I was wrong about God, letting these people come into these areas, because, like, according to this, he'd be at both, pretty much the left, right, and right in the middle. Maybe he's not pushing people out of these areas. I don't know. Maybe there's going to be a rapture event. I hope there is. I think it'd be cool. Giant spaceships show up and we get teleported into the ships right before the Earth gets totally trashed. That'd be cool. Millions of non-U.S. citizens were issued Social Security numbers under Democratic administrations, and many of them voted. Yeah, and the scheme was working too. And finally, the pinned post for this week, even requiring a tiny amount of work for fraudulent payments, would have had a massive positive impact. That's how insanely awful the level of fraud actually is. A simple defend the spend method, which would help in reducing fraud, is to require a description, receipt, and picture before funds are dispersed. Yeah, well, there you go. Probably could have summed up today's posts with there's a lot being said about the fraud in Minnesota, Minneapolis, as well as Ohio and other parts of the country. There's just a massive amount of fraud being exposed. And thankfully, we get to hear about it because of platforms like X. In other news, 3i Atlas continues to amaze us. BP Earthwatch did a couple of specials this weekend talking about how he's more convinced than ever that it's an armada of ships, and that the anti-tail is actually a shield that deflects materials from the armada. And that was based on Professor Avi Loeb saying something similar, that it's very likely some kind of technological shield. So that's our update on 3i Atlas. If you're interested in those videos, you can just look at BP Earthwatch. He did a series of videos. He's been doing a series of videos on the Emerald Tablets and the Anunnaki. I don't really subscribe to the validity of the Emerald Tablets. I've looked into them at multiple times. Every time it comes up, I look into them again, and I get convinced that they're not valid, just because of, number one, the Emerald Tablets don't exist. They came into existence for a very short period of time. One individual had the privilege of reading them and deciphering them, and wrote the papers on the Emerald Tablets. I think it's very interesting the way it coincides with a lot of records in the Bible. BP Earthwatch tends to put a lot of weight into their validity. I don't know. Maybe it is. I mean, it could explain a lot of things in regards to the pyramids and the technology of that day and age. He goes into pretty extreme depth in his current series, reading from these papers based on the Emerald Tablets. I mean, there's a lot of things that I do agree with, and there's a lot of overlap. So I don't know. Typically, when I look into them, it's so sketch that it's hard to base anything really on those. But anyway, that's your Torment report in your 3i Atlas update. We're getting ready for a new year. This is pretty exciting. I'm very curious to see what's going to happen in February, because that is when the seal number 5 seems to be scheduled for being opened. Maybe something will happen with 3i Atlas. I don't know. We'll see. Thank you so much for joining me tonight. If you like this content, make sure you like and subscribe. It really does help the channel. It helps get this video out there to more people. We're going to continue to work on reducing the length. I really want to get this show to under an hour. Probably should have skipped some more posts today because we spent a lot of time on the Minnesota fraud, probably more than we really needed to. Honestly, we probably could have summed up most of what Elon was reposting under the Minnesota fraud. So I'll get better at that. We'll continue to work on summarizing these things and only focusing on the ones that are really important. But thank you so much for joining me. Really appreciate it. Look forward to seeing you again tomorrow at 4:30 Western time, Pacific Standard Time, 7:30 Eastern Time. Thanks so much for joining me. God bless you guys. Shalom, shalom. Keep looking up.